I'm Dom Gervasi, owner and producer of Maine and Brooklyn Tours, going virtual from my apartment to interview people who are making it in Brooklyn and elsewhere for my new Making It series. In this episode, I'll be interviewing Eleonora Volpe, sustainable stylist and art director and founder of the Society of Green Arts. Eleonora has worked on the set and shoots videos and runway shows for brands like CK, Hugo Boss, Bulgari, and DKNY. Eleonora is also the founder of the Society of Green Arts, a nonprofit for upcycling and creative waste reuse. Good morning, Eleonora. How are you today?
Hi, I'm very well.
So I met you through BK Style Foundation, which organizes Fashion Week Brooklyn. And you're going to be curating one of the shows that we have slated, one of the virtual expos that we'll be doing in conjunction with BK Style. So that's how I met you. Yeah. And I thought, okay, I'm interviewing for these Making It videos. I'm interviewing creative people. And I thought, all right, this is interesting. You are a stylist. Yes. So what is a stylist?
What is a stylist? That's a good question. Like, not many people know that, but basically, as a stylist, you almost work as an art director most of the time, but you do that with clothing. So there's usually like a concept or a mood board that you start from when you're working on something. And then, you start from that idea and kind of like put all the pieces together. So you have to do a lot of research about designers and stuff, reach out, and create a consistent story, like visually speaking. So, yeah.
So you're almost like a museum curator, but for fashion, and obviously the exhibits are mainly people, right?
Yeah.
People who are wearing apparel and showing off, let's say, handbags, accessories, and
is our Canva that we work on, so that's pretty accurate. I like that idea.
Okay, so how did you get into this?
Well, I was doing something totally different. I was actually like studying back in Italy, and I was graduating in Chinese, so I was like doing something totally different. But I always been super creative, and I was really into fashion since I was a little kid, but it was kind of more like a hobby, something I would look at, but I never really considered it as a career. So I was studying Chinese to become an interpreter, and I got
interesting. Okay.
I did 5 years. I lived in China. I did all that. And then I was just not very happy with my job when I started working, because it was very, it was not as creative as I wish. And it was a lot of office work. And, I was like in a commercial office working with China. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, after investing 5 years in building that, I was just not happy with what I was doing. So I was really in crisis. I didn't have a clue what to do. And then I met this woman, and
this is in China?
This is in Italy. This was back in Italy.
So you left China. You were where were you? In Shanghai or Beijing?
I was in Beijing for 1 year. Yeah.
Okay, and then you go back to Italy.
Exactly. Got my degree, and then I met this woman like pretty randomly, and I really liked her. And we started talking, and she had a fashion school. So she started talking to me about this fashion styling, course, like classes that they had at the school. And I never heard that job before. And when she told me that, something just, I don't know, like I was like, I want to do this. I really understood in that moment that was what I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. So I left my job. I went back to school for fashion this time. And I got another master's degree, and then I moved to New York. So
where were you in Italy?
I'm from Verona.
From Verona. Oh, beautiful. Verona's Romeo and Juliet, right?
Exactly.
Beautiful, beautiful city. Okay, so you go from Italy. Now, did you do anything in the fashion world in Italy?
Not really, no. I was working for Max Mara Group. That actually helped me a lot because that was my retail experience. So I was going to school, and at the same time I was working for them as like a personal shopper and a stylist in the store, and also doing like visual merchandising and stuff like that. So that really helped me understanding how to dress regular people, what fits better on a certain kind of body shape, or understanding who is in front of me, because of course everybody have different tastes. So it's very important to make your choices wisely to what you purpose to that person, so that she's gonna like it. And so that was like a good training for me.
Mm-hmm.
But it was still not in the back of my head to become a real stylist, so I was anywhere near that, but that helped me later on.
So you're working retail, and then, but I thought you said you also went to school, right?
Yeah.
And you got a master's degree. Were you doing that at the same time, or was the retail experience before you got your degree?
I was studying Chinese and working.
Oh,
Yes.
I see. And then you decide, all right, no, you met this woman. Should we know this woman? Who is this woman?
Her name is Elisa Sorrentino, and she's one of the two founders of Mood Art Fashion School that is in Verona. And it's a pretty new school, like it has maybe 10-15 years, so it's very new. But I loved it because they have a very practical approach. Like, you start basically working on set from day one, so you really understand how it works, like practicing. There's not a lot of theory, it's more practical, and I think that's very useful for this kind of job.
And I'm going to ask you about how you applied that education when you moved to the United States. So you come to the U.S. Now, why? There you are in northern Italy, not too far away from Milan.
Yeah.
And what drives you to come to the United States and Brooklyn?
Yeah, because during this master degree in fashion styling, part of the program was spending 1 week in New York. And during this week, we had the chance to work with local photographers and studios. So I came here for the first time, and I got so excited. Like, the city really hit me in a very positive way, and I felt the energy of this place. And so I couldn't stop thinking about it when I went back home. And so, yeah, also I like challenges.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it wasn't really scaring me, like the idea to move so far away. It was more like exciting for me. So, yeah, so I started talking about this at my school, and then they found a way for me to start with an internship in Red Hook. There is this production studio, it's called Red Hook Labs. They had very big clients, so I started out like really big, like in February. That was like the busiest month. So I came here, and after 3 days, I was on site for DKNY, and then we did Bergdorf Goodman, Calvin Klein. So it was like I jumped right into it without even really knowing how it was working. So it was very intense, and I learned very fast because of that. It was like, I think if I would go back, I would make the same choices. I would come here because what I learned here is really valuable, and I did so many experiences. So
what a fortunate coincidence. With the school in Italy, meeting this, I'm sure she's your best friend now in Italy. And then you come to, of all places, Red Hook. Now, I know Red Hook really well. It is my favorite neighborhood. I would say that if I could, I'd live in Red Hook.
It's a very particular neighborhood, but I love it. Yes.
Yeah, and finding I never heard of Red Hook Lab, and they have all these connections. And which neighborhood you said you're living in?
I'm in Prospect Leopards.
Prospect Lesford. It's very close to Prospect Park, right?
I love living here. Yeah, 1 block from the park, and have a nice backyard. I love this neighborhood.
Great. Well, that's important too. Could you say anything about? I mean, you have some small amount of experience in China.
Yeah.
Obviously, you were born in Italy, grew up in Italy. Can you say anything about the differences between the fashion scenes in Italy versus here and in China?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't know China that well, but I think under that point of view, I mean, but I think they're growing up very fast. Like right now, the level of fashion in China is almost at the same level of like Europe and the United States. Like aesthetically speaking, there are amazing photographers. Like I've been working myself with a Chinese photographer just a few days ago, and the art director was Chinese as well. So it was very interesting for me to be on set, you know, and hearing speaking Chinese again, and you know, kind of trying to mix my visual aesthetic with theirs. So I found it really interesting, and they are very young, very motivated, and very talented. So I think China has a bright future for fashion. I really do.
Mm-hmm. But what are so there are, you would say everybody's at the same level, the same caliber. Are there any, you know, anything that's uniquely different, and maybe from the perspective of a stylist in Brooklyn, from that perspective, looking at Italy and looking at the Chinese fashion scene, what do you think is different?
So for me, Italy is very attached to tradition. So you can really see that, generally speaking, like in how people wear and the kind of fashion that is more, you know, that is selling more in Italy compared to New York or the United States. So as I was saying, Italy is very attached to tradition, which is something amazing because we have such a rich heritage. Like even for fashion, like if you look at fashion history in Europe in general is amazing. But I think sometimes it can be a little bit maybe limiting just because we think that things should be done in a certain way to be made correctly. So we are more strict maybe and less open to change. While what I feel here is that people are experimenting so much, even like styling wise, but maybe they lack heritage. So sometimes they need like more guidance, you know? So that I think is really interesting, and living here changed my style so much because right now I do have a European style, but it's kind of mixed with this more like fresh American. So I play around more than I used to do back in the past. So
Yeah,
I'm
New York.
myself a lot.
You probably have heard New York is the melting pot, and the way I look at it, especially because I'm Italian American myself, and my family is from Italy, I look at it as if people coming from other countries have an opportunity to contribute to, in your case, what is fashion. So there is the Italian influence. So you're able to bring that to the table. So now, what about comparing the Brooklyn fashion scene to China? I mean, China's a big place, and I'm sure there's a lot of different. It's huge. So in your limited experience, so it'd be interesting to hear what you have to say about that.
Yeah, I think there are many very talented young designers, photographers, models that are really making an impact right now. And China is also most traditional, but of course their tradition like aesthetically speaking, is very different from European aesthetic. So that's also interesting. But I really love what is happening in Asia right now, because I feel like Asian fashion is starting having the voice it deserves to have. So, and even here, like if you look at New York Fashion Week right now, so many runway shows are actually from Chinese designers. So it's very interesting to see how this is growing, and is growing very fast. So like a couple of years ago, I worked on a show of a Chinese designer called Calvin Luo. He is amazingly talented, and when I took part of this show, he was like 21. So I was totally shocked about his talent and all the effort and the budget. And I mean, the runway show was simply amazing. Maybe in the future I will have the chance to go to China and work there a little bit. I would love that.
Because you speak Chinese, right?
Yeah.
So
now I'm not that fluent anymore, because you need to practice a lot. It's not an easy language. But yeah, if I go back there, I'm sure it will come back to me. So
well, there are a lot of Chinese people in Brooklyn, so
yeah.
I'm sure there are different dialects. I'm not familiar with the language scene in China, but I'm sure there are many different dialects. But maybe you could practice. I tried practicing my Italian here, but many of the people that I relate to who are from Italy, they speak a dialect. They're a little bit of the older generation, so they're not speaking fluent Italian. They're speaking, Sicilian or Calabrese. Totally different. I can't follow them, so so I'm going to put your website on the bottom here.
Yes.
And so you're coming into your own. So you're out of Red Hook Lab, and now you're starting to get work on your own, right?
Absolutely. I've been working on my own since 3 years now, more or less, and so much changed since the very beginning, because I started out, assisting stylists, and I had the chance to really work with very good stylists like the editor of Vogue France or the editor of Vogue Japan. So I had the chance to be on set with them and see them working, and I learned so much from that. And then I just started out, styling my first editorials, and then getting my first clients. And what really changed for me is that, going on into my career, like getting deeper into it, I found myself getting more and more involved in sustainable fashion. That is actually what I do right now. Like, I am a sustainable stylist and art director. So I really started to focus on that.
Yes. So I was going to ask you, you've mentioned some, well-known brands, and sustainability is it's a huge theme.
Yes.
And everybody interprets it differently. But it'll be interesting because you went so far as to start a nonprofit concerning this. So one question I had for you is, as you're working with these big brands, in your opinion, in your sincere opinion, are they doing enough?
Absolutely not.
They're not. Okay, so this is what compels you to start your own thing. What made you say, all right, I want to go in this direction? What was was there a last straw? Was it just something you saw that you felt this shouldn't be happening? Is it the fast fashion scene? What really compelled you to do that, to start a nonprofit? I'm going to put the website for the Society of Green Arts, right?
It's a brand new project that I'm very, very excited about.
So tell us about the origin of this, and like I said, I'd like you also to start from what you see in the fashion world today and where you want to go with this.
Yeah. Well, I feel like in New York and Brooklyn, the sustainable fashion network is really wide. So I think I started to see things in a different way when I connected with some of the people that are involved into this, like fashion revolution or global exchange. Like there are many organizations and nonprofits that work on different levels in order to change the fashion industry, because the problem is that it's really a polluting industry. So it's beautiful. Like I love high fashion, I love the creativity of it. But the problem is it's the second industry that pollutes more. And that's for so many reasons, like the materials they use to create the clothing, how they dye the clothing, and all the shippings, like ship stuff here, ship stuff there. That's all packaging, so that's more plastic. And then it just ended up in also exploiting people that work for pennies to create a shirt that you buy for $3 and wear maybe 2 times and then throw away and end up in a landfill. So this is fashion's reality right now. And the problem is, since people have less budget, generally speaking, because we do live in hard times, they really go for fast fashion. So that business was growing like dramatically. And so that really had a very bad impact on the environment. So I think just, researching, I'm a stylist, so I research a lot of designers, stylists, trends. So I started seeing all this happening. And I mean, it was always there. I just didn't really know. And then I couldn't just pretend it was not happening. So I had to make a decision where I wanted to stand, you know, if I wanted to be, as they say, part of the problem or part of the solution. And also, I love sustainable fashion, but I think many times there is a lot of miscommunication about it, because you think of it as like maybe like a very boring fashion, or very like plain and repetitive, or maybe too hippie or boho. But there are really good options really good alternatives to fast fashion and regular fashion. You just maybe don't know about it. So this is why I do what I do, to actually raise awareness about these things.
Well, I would agree with you that sustainable fashion or eco fashion, that there's a lot of greenwashing. Maybe it's intentional, or maybe it's just not knowing how to deliver the message, not knowing what the message is.
Absolutely.
In some conversations I've had with people in Brooklyn, the word sustainable is considered a bad word, that you shouldn't use it at all. And my feeling about it is, no, I don't think you should shy away from the word. I feel like if you don't know what it is, then define it. So the question to you is, how do you define? Because and by the way, I think this works really well in a creative field like fashion, because your definition of sustainable fashion doesn't have to be the same as everyone else's. So you could have your own unique approach to it that's very different from everybody else's, and yet because of the way you define it and you're very clear about it, people understand that, all right, this is sustainable fashion. It may not be the same as this other stylist's version, but you have yours. So especially pertaining to the Society of the Green Arts, where you're attempting to attract fashion designers, right? You're trying to make those are your members. Am I right about that?
Yeah. Okay. So let's start with the first
Right.
question.
Let's start with the messaging, and then we'll get into the Society of Green Arts.
Yes. So, what is sustainability for me? So, sustainable fashion, it's a very wide spectrum of different elements. But for me, what is more important is to understand how to reuse what we already have and how to avoid creating new waste. So ideally, we would reach a level of perfection where we're gonna, just start working on like a circular economy model. That would be ideal, because in that case there is no waste, there is simply transformation. So it's like nature, it's a cycle. You don't create to waste, you create and then recreate. So to me that would be like ideal, like a zero waste economy, because that would really solve all the problems we have on pollution right now. So what I decided to focus on with the society is upcycling. That is actually a word that many people don't even know what it means, because it's different from recycling. It's just reinvent the waste. So you take a waste of some sort and you transform it into something new. So I started educating myself first about that and doing research and, looking for creative ideas. And I think this really happened for me during quarantine, because at that point I just had all my jobs canceled for a few months. And so I had a lot of time, and I started thinking, what can I do to make fashion better? Like, what it is that people need to hear? What are the solutions? So this is how I came up with this nonprofit idea. And for now, the goal is to create a solid community of creatives that work in that direction. And it's amazing to see how all of these designers and artists, because the Society of Green Art is not about fashion, but it's, a little bit about everything.
I
How,
definitely I see the convergence between art and fashion.
yeah,
I see that happening in Brooklyn. I think that may be something that's unique about the fashion scene in Brooklyn, or at least in New York City.
yeah.
So you were talking about upcycling. So can you give me an example? Give us an example of a case, because if I understand it correctly, you're taking something that's waste,
Yes,
that may be considered, just trash and unusable, and yet you're using that to create something new that
yeah,
is more valuable, or at least perceived to have more valuable than the waste. And
absolutely.
right, and if that's the case, then that means that you're going to value. You're actually, if you're the buyer, you're actually valuing the waste.
Absolutely. That's the whole concept. That's the whole idea. And I think this is exactly what we need, because there's so much that needs to be fixed. So how do you do it? You use your creativity to reinvent that things, because if you throw them away, they just don't really go away. Like, there is an island of plastic right now in the ocean that is bigger than France. So we have to give a hard look at what we're doing, in order to make it better and do it differently. So, for example, you're asking me for examples.
Yeah, give me, and if you can also, are there any, because we want this to be not, I mean, I like this concept personally. Um, I think we'd all like this to, or people who are really concerned about the environment will like this to be something that major brands also embrace. So if you could give some insight into brands that you feel are doing it right, particularly in the area of upcycling.
So for upcycling, I feel like these are still very small brands and designers starting out. So this is also why I feel like it's important to give them visibility, because it's something that is just starting. So, they're small and they're growing, and people need to know about this. There are some bigger brands that are starting to upcycle part of their collections, or maybe being more paying more attention to, like the materials they use and these kind of things. But it's still really a very, very little percentage of them. So they're mostly small local designers. So, for example, an example of upcycling, there is this a designer, she's in London, but there are more designers that do the same things that are also in New York. That what they do is they use bike tubes instead of leather to create jewelry or belts or bags. And and the designs are so fresh and innovative, and I love them. Like, I have a few pieces myself. Actually, if you want, I can show you like a couple of examples. And I love it. Like, as an alternative to leather, I think it's brilliant, and you can do so many different things with it. Or I don't know, like other designers that use like the tins. How do you call the little thing on the top?
You're talking about what, like yogurt, for example,
The
or
things that you clip. How you
oh,
call
the bottle, not the bottle, the
it?
tab. You pull
Yeah,
off the cans.
yeah.
Okay.
So they take that little part and they create like kind of chains, and then they paint them, and so they create like more jewelry out of it. Or there is an artist that she makes chandelier out of it. And also I think it's also very interesting to see how these creatives reuse plastic, because that's probably, the most dangerous kind of pollution that we have right now. So that's also very interesting. Like, one artist, I don't know, she folds all the plastic bags and she creates these mandalas that are beautiful, and you just can hang on your wall. And I'm actually I think I'm gonna project those mandalas for the show, actually, for the sustainable show.
Mandala is in Tibetan Buddhism, right? That it's kind of like a maze, very elaborate, right? Different layers.
Yeah, it's a circular shape. Yeah, it's like full of like repetition and very like geometrical. And yeah, like making mandalas is a sort of meditation in a way.
So when I was reading about you before this interview, I read that you were working with thrift shops and so on. So, I have some thrift clothing. I have a red leather jacket, that I think Shaft would wear. You don't know Shaft, but that's the kind of vintage that I might own. Also, I try not to throw out things unless I really, really have to. So I try to value what I purchase. So, my concern with upcycling is that after you create something new from the waste,
Yeah.
Is it something that is valued so much that you keep it for a long period of time, or does it go back into the waste stream again and then become waste that is not valued? So how do you get around that? Because right now, everybody's we really don't have a choice. Like you said, we're in hard times, so we're looking for the best deal, and that often means we're buying things that are cheaper, not necessarily the best quality, and that adds to the fast fashion scene, which is like you said, the second most polluting industry.
Absolutely.
So how would you address that?
I think right now we do have the means to have alternatives to that. We just need maybe to focus more, like to put some effort in there, and also do some research, because now there are many different ways that you can like, my goal, generally speaking, is saving any kind of waste from going to landfills for the longer amount of time that you can do that. So the way you can do it is recycling, upcycling, and when it comes to clothing, it's also like swapping or donating. So you have something at home that you don't wear anymore, don't throw it away, swap it. That means you can exchange it for something new. And that's also like usually way cheaper than buying something from a store, because it's just like an exchange of goods. And now there are apps that are super easy to use that you can use to do that, or you can sell to thrift stores, so you even get a little bit of the value back. So there are many stores in New York. I'm sorry, there is an ambulance or something.
That's normal. New York City.
Exactly.
So I'm curious because my favorite place to donate, I mean, I have a couple, but like this Covenant House, and there's also the Salvation Army. I really believe that's a good way to go. I'm really curious because I'm curious about how much of that actually gets recycled. I would love to go to behind the scenes and see how all of the clothing that's donated, how that is re-entering the stream. But you mentioned an app. Could you say the name of a couple of apps that people could use to do clothing swaps and things like that?
Okay, so one of the main channels that I use is Global Fashion Exchange. They do organize huge swaps, both in person and online, and they have their own app. So that one is very useful. Or hold on. Listia, Peerby, ThreadUp. I used this one before. ThreadUp is also very good. Or you can also find swapping on Craigslist. You can swap with friends. Like there are like many different ways that you can do this, And I think it's interesting because it's an exchange. So let's say you don't wanna, you're bored of something you have in your closet. You can get something new without having to buy a new item. So I think that's really interesting. Or again, most stores, like for example, like I don't know, L Train or Beacon's Closet, or like all the secondhand stores
Housing Works
that are in New York. You just go there and you can resell your items, and then they put it back in the store, so they're gonna be like sold again, and they give you a little credit for that, so you can get something new. So there are many solutions that you can actually find. It's just a matter, of researching the solutions. So, yeah.
So I want to. We're getting close to the end of the interview, and I want to wrap this up in a positive way. So I know that. I'm working with you in a sense on the Brooklyn Beauty Fashion Labo, BK Style Foundation Sustainable Fashion Show. I think you're working on that one. But also, I like you to talk more about the Society of the Green Arts and how you want this to grow.
Yeah.
So I want to give you the floor with that. I'm going to put the website back on, and you could just say something about that, and also what kind of members you're trying to attract, and also what kind of an audience you're trying to serve. So if you could do that, that would be a great way to end this interview.
Sure. So for this society right now, I'm collaborating, as you were mentioning, with Brooklyn Style Foundation that is organizing the Fashion Week Brooklyn. So what I'm gonna do with the society is, of course, I'm styling the runway show, and that's probably, that's what I love to do. But we are also organizing a series of workshops, that are gonna be like on Zoom, where these designers actually explain how they upcycle a material, how they create something new. So I think what's interesting is also that most of the upcycling techniques are actually easy to make. So you can learn that and do it at home. So there are going to be all of these workshops that say, hey, look at your closet and, take out what you don't like anymore. And I'm going to teach you how to transform this item into something you're going to love. Or, you have all of these paper waste. Let's make like a a fun hat out of it, or whatever. So I think my goal is to reach as more people as possible. I don't want this to be just a niche. I want this to really pique like people curiosity in order to give them like some ideas, of things that I can actually do themselves. So this is one of my goals. And my other goal is to actually help these designers, getting more visibility and growing. And also we do have a very strong educational goal. So one of the ideas for 2021 is starting like collaborating with schools in order to create programs that, where again, the designers and the creatives can just teach younger generations how to do things in a different way. Because the problem is, if we keep going like this, pollution is just gonna get way worse, and we definitely don't want this to happen. So I think it's very important. Like, if I have to choose just one target, I would say the younger generations, because they are the future, and it's so important, that they create something better. So yeah.
Well, thanks for saying that. It's a very positive message for the younger generation. And hey, I'm Generation X. I'm interested in this too. Don't leave us out. Um, but I think there's hope with people like you in the world who are trying to do something positive and practical. It seems like you brought your education from Italy here, and that could be a major. That seems like it's a major contribution to what you do.
It's actually, now I am like, huge spoiler and fingers crossed. I'm actually working on a project that we are submitting to Vogue Italia about that. So it's me and the photographer, and the idea is to actually like explain all the little like subcategories, that are within sustainable fashion, So that would be very interesting, because in that case we would be explaining like a little bit of the whole thing, and people can just get informations, and then they can make more conscious choices about what they want to do, because there's so much confusion right now. So
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, there are brands like Uniqlo, which at least had a program where you could return. Like, I do tours in all weathers, so I wear Uniqlo's undergarments. The thermals, and they stretch out. They're made of synthetic material, so I could, if I wanted to, return it to them. But then, are they upcycling it? I don't know what's happening with it.
there is an app that is called Good on You, and you can just put the name of the brand in there, and it tells you how sustainable that brand is and why. So I find it very interesting, because if I am in doubt, like if I don't have much information about one particular brand, and I want like a straightforward answer, like very clear, and I just use this application. So it's called, again, Good on You. So that one is.
Thank you for that. That's very useful, because you never could tell, are they greenwashing or not. These are businesses. They're not. I don't expect them to be to operate like charities, but if their customer is concerned, then they should be concerned too. So like I said, I do tours in different types of weather. So I typically shop at REI or a place like that, and I might get clothing from Patagonia, and they often say they're doing something.
Brand for sustainability, for example, is one of the positive examples in fashion for sustainability.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what I mean. It's good. I'm glad you mentioned that app. I think that'll be very helpful for people. So clearly, what I'm happy about is that you're not just talking the talk, that you really know your subject matter. It seems like you know it really well, and you're motivated to do something about it. So let's see how the Society for the Green Arts works out for you as you continue to make it in Brooklyn. Eleonora, thank you very much for taking the time to speak to us about what you're doing as a stylist professionally, and also about a concern that is close to your heart with the Society of the Green Arts. And I just want to thank you again, and I'll see you soon as we work on the virtual expo with Brooklyn Beauty Fashion Labo.
Yes, excited about that.
Thank you for watching another episode of Making It. I'm Dom Gervasi, hoping that you too are making it a good one wherever you are.